Okay, you ready? Turn to page 2. I'm going to give you the answers to those questions real quick. So the first question, the answer, yes. He created it. Second question. You ready? It's just a difference in statistical reliability. It's a difference in statistical reliability. For all of your science people out there. How's the Bible different from a science book or a history book? In a huge way. It's a story about God and God's interaction with humanity. It is not really concerned with how you figure out what the molecular DNA of something is. It's about you and God. It's about us as humanity and God. So how would you describe, how would describe how you would know? That's a good question. How do you know there's a God? Yeah. So that's the answer to that question, is how do you know there's a God? The answer to that is it's experiential. And then how would you explain your faith in Jesus? You have to see question 4. Because it's your experience in which you can explain. You know why? Huh? Oh, see, I'm gonna disagree with you. Yeah. Because like we're brought up. I was brought up in a church with the Bible tells me so it's true. But the early church flourished, exploded, and there was no Bible. So how did that happen? So I want to suggest to you that your faith is not based on a book. It's based on a relationship with a risen Savior. So anyway, the question that is begging here is, how do you know there's a God? How would you describe that? If you were sitting across the table from a friend of yours who was an atheist or an agnostic or someone who didn't believe in God, and they said, you go to church? Or you say you're a Christian? Why do you believe in God? How can you, someone I respect, someone I care for, believe that there's a God? That's the question. How would you answer it? How would you answer it? So when I was when I was in my 20s, I started having a neck problem. Well, I had a neck problem my whole life, but I started to really have a neck problem. So it was one of these great things where I was in graduate school and I was in class and I would turn my head to look one direction or the other, and then my whole body would go numb. You know, football players describe it as like a full body stinger, you know, where you spear somebody and your spinal cord compresses to the point where the interior of your spinal cord touches the exterior walls of your spine, and it creates just like almost like an electrical shock of numbness. And then everything kind of comes back, and and it was getting worse. So I was playing volleyball at the time, and I'd jump and I'd hit the ground, and when I hit the ground, I'd get that sting sensation, and it got really dangerous when I was driving, and I'd go to look one way or the other, and like my arms would shut down. So I had to get it taken care of, and I went and I had surgery, and that's how I earned my halo. If you were here a while ago, I showed you my halo. It's in my office. I am in already with God. But that's not what I wanted to share with you. It's a setup for this. So I had totaled like 3 cars at this point in my driving career. I wasn't doing real well, and I like to hit things all my life. I had a go-kart even before I could drive, and every 2 weeks we were fixing it because I'd hit a tree or something. And so my parents were a little concerned because I had this halo on, and eventually I was going to start driving again, and now I got this fragile neck situation. So I had like this Toyota Celica. I love Toyota Celicas, and but it didn't have airbags, and the doctors had suggested that I had a car with airbags, and this was like in 1994. So we were still pedaling cars with our feet back then, and there weren't any, like only the newer cars, if you remember when the airbags started rolling out, the newer cars would have them, and it was just like the driver's side or the driver's side and passenger side, and then they had the side, all right. So this was like, airbags are kind of new. So I ended up getting a Jetta, a Volkswagen Jetta, and it was a nice car. And I had it for like a year or two. But every once in a while, it was a Standard. Do you remember Standards? Like, yeah. So every once in a while, I'd hit the gas, and it wasn't my clutch foot. I was pretty smooth, but I'd hit the gas, and the car would kind of like gurgle a little, and then like hesitate a little, and it got worse and worse and worse the longer I had the car. And I took it back to the dealer. Do you ever have an experience like you have a messed up car and you take it back to the dealer and you're like, this is a brand new car, help me out. And they say, oh, let my mechanic take it around and see if he can mimic the problem. There's nothing wrong with it. We can't find anything. Okay, I'm pulling out of the parking lot. Like my neck is like getting jarred from the, So it went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and like a year of taking it to the dealership, and they're like, there's nothing wrong with it. We're running all the diagnostics. Can you take it out with our mechanic? Sure, I'll show you. Okay, I take the mechanic for a ride, I show him, and like he must have thought like I had like a trigger foot or something, because oh, okay, I feel that, and let me try it, and he'd get in and it wouldn't do it, right? So it's this whole thing going on and on and on. Did you ever know something was wrong and not everybody else is seeing it? C.S. Lewis, he's a famous Christian author from a century ago, from the 1900s, from the 20th century. And he was asked all the time. He was an atheist who became a Christian, and he was asked all the time about, how he knew there was a God. And one of his arguments I love, I think it's so pertinent. He says, "Did you ever get thirsty? What do you seek after? What do you do when you get hungry? What happens when you know that there's just something not right?" And it's not a physical thing. Like in your soul, you seek. You seek after water, you seek after food, you seek after God. You ask if there's a God. I ask, do you sense that something's wrong? Do you sense there's something missing that you just know you need to seek after? The first CH, right, is chance. Do you ever play the lottery? Don't raise your hand. There's some big lotteries these days. Like we're getting up in the hundreds of millions, almost to $1 billion. I'm kind of joking with God in my prayer life. Like if it gets to $1 billion, am I allowed to buy a $2 ticket? So what are the odds? What are the odds of hitting the lottery? What are the odds what are the chances of hitting the lottery? What are the chances of being struck by lightning? What are the chances of getting a lemon car? What are the chances? What are the chances? You got stay with me. Like this gets deep. What are the chances that out of nothing we're here? Out of nothing. Boom, we're here. I would say to you that if I was going to put my money on something, I'd buy a lot of Mega Millions tickets because I have better odds at winning that than nothing starting something. That's hard. It just, so I have some friends who are atheists, and I share with them, they have more faith than me. Because to think that out of nothing, like the whole God concept makes so much more sense to have a prime mover, to have something that existed outside of time and space, timeless, that just makes so much more sense to me. Logically, it makes more sense to me. What are the chances? So when this is some weird stuff. It goes back to 1996, and I had been driving around my Jetta for 2 years, and they'd been bucking and everything, and I'm all good. And I decided that I was going to go to seminary in 1996. A crazy series of events. I was working with people in social work. I had a master's in psychology and was doing some counseling with some tough clients, and some of them were addicts and some of them were not. And what I realized was that to address the psychological, and this is just for me, so this isn't a proof for the existence of God, but to address the psychological need of many people, including myself, without something greater than my own mind, something greater than anybody's mind in science. It just took God. Like there were some circumstances that were so messed up, like nothing, no one, no how, no amount of time was going to fix it unless God transformed the situation. So and in that role as a social worker through an agency that received a grant from the state, I wasn't allowed to talk about God unless the client brought God up. So I went to seminary, decided that I was going to pursue this calling that God, I thought, had put on my life. And what was crazy was I applied to a seminary in California, because everybody's got to go to California, right, and live at least for a little bit. There was a yearning. And so I applied, and I was dating my wife at the time, Denise. I was dating her, and we had, she was at work one day. She worked at the Paramount Hotel in New York, and She was running the PBX department, and she knew that I had applied to seminary and applied to a couple, but I wanted to go to the one in California because I just had to go to California. And in came this guy with the owner, and they were looking around and trying to figure stuff out, and they started talking to Denise. And it happened that the owner had just bought a new hotel in West Hollywood and was looking for a PBX manager to manage and train their department in West Hollywood, California. And he offered Denise a job. So before I was even accepted to the seminary that I wanted to go to, my then dating friend already got a job. I don't even know. It perplexes me. So she already had a job in California before I was accepted to the seminary, and then I got accepted to the seminary. So I went to seminary in September, and Denise was coming at the beginning of November, and I was going to fly back to bring her, to come with her and help her with her stuff and everything. So I was at seminary, and I was a really good student, so I spent all night writing my first paper instead of doing it like I was supposed to. And I was really tired, and I turned the paper in at 8 in the morning, and then I decided I was just going to get, and I didn't have a car at that point. I left my bucking Jetta at home. I decided I was going to jump a bus and go to Santa Monica because the beach is just a place for me, like I connect at the beach. So I went to, I jumped a bus, and LA has a great bus system, but I've never been on it. So I just kind of got on and thought like it was for free. And I found out that not only was it not for free, but I had to take a transfer downtown somewhere. So forgive me, some of you might have heard this story. So I took a transfer, I went down to the beach, I hung out at the beach all day. I was praying. I was connecting with God. I had this, it's great being in that student role where there's not much weighing on you, and you just, so I'm hanging out on the beach and praying, and I started asking God, I'm like, I really like Denise. I could see me marrying her. But I really want what you want, God. Like I want to know that that she's your pick for me, not my pick for me. And so I said, well, I'm dumb. I need some clear signs. I don't know where the Diamond District is. I don't have any money. And I came home, and I'm coming home at night, and I missed my stop, and then the bus driver said, oh, no big deal. We're going to go up here, go around the corner. I'll drop you off. You walk down a block. So they dropped me off, and I walked down a block, and I turned the corner, and there's the Diamond District. And then my dad sold my Jetta for the amount of money that I was looking to spend on a ring. And I was like, okay, that's good enough, right? She had a job in LA before I was even here. No money. So here's the thing. The second CH is things change, right? We're born into a world that is constantly changing. Everything's changing all the time. As we're here sitting, you're changing. Your thought patterns are changing. The air is changing. Your physical bodies are changing. I think that's evidence of God. A God who gave us the choice. See, without the change, we wouldn't have as many choices to make. And all of those choices, the change and the choice, they go together. They go together to bring us into a relationship with a God who just isn't a God. See, part of the God question for us, is there a God? Yeah, okay, well, there's a God, but then what about Jesus? And is this a God who's like just this God who created and let it go? Like, you ever do that with anything? I tried that with fish one time. I bought them, I put a tank in, dropped the fish in, just let them go. You know what happened, right? A couple weeks later, I'm dumping, explaining to the kids. God is active and present. And I think where creation is change, it's always change because there's always choices, and the choices point us to God. Jesus came on the scene, and the cool thing about the early church was there was no Bible. They based their whole testimony on relationship. They saw him raised from the dead. What do you do? We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. Like, well, what do you do if you go visit your loved one's grave, and all of a sudden they're just like up and about, and it puts an imprint on you. Especially if you're walking with Jesus and you know the whole like God saga behind him and being born of the Virgin Mary and the amazing things he could do, and he's telling you that there's a life after death and that I'll take you there, and he's going to die on the cross for your sins, and all of this, and you have these choices to make, and you see even Peter making the choice after choice after choice where he's constantly making wrong choices, and Jesus just keeps loving him and loving him like God loves us. And even after the resurrection, Jesus comes to Peter and says, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. Just feed my sheep, feed my sheep, feed my sheep. I forgive you. You denied me 3 times. You ran, like, all of that is forgiven because I love you. I came for you. Christ is God's exclamation point on his creation. We're here. He loves us. He offers us this incredible choice. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to love him. Be in a relationship with him. So, is there a God? I love the Genesis story this morning. God created the heavens and the earth, and then he took Adam, first man. And so in Genesis 1, God creates the universe with a word. Each day, a word. He speaks. He's so powerful. It's incredible, right? Can you imagine speaking in like a universe? The entire existence is created. Like, that's God. And then he takes Adam, and he takes him and he forms him with his hands out of the dust of the ground. Can you imagine? God's own hands on you, forming you, creating you, molding you. The potter. And then he gets you to the point where he's ready for life. And he doesn't just zap him or tap him. God takes God's lips and puts them to Adam's lips and breathes his life into him. It's like the kiss of life. So intimate. So personal. Formed by God's own hand. Alive by God's own breath. How better to tell the story? Is there a God? Yeah. He created everything and is so powerful, and he exists so powerfully that he creates it with a breath, with a word. Everything's here. And he's so intimate that he formed us with his own hands and breathed into us life with his own breath. Is there a God? Yeah. And he loves you and he loves me so much that Jesus came on the scene so that we would know that. and so that we would know that there's something beyond this life, and that we would know and have trust and faith that he could take us there. And he wasn't witnessed by 2 people or 12 people or 100 people. He was witnessed by thousands. That's what our faith is based on.